projection.
Hello and welcome to Taking It Down. It's the pop culture podcast from analytical Alabama TV loving minds. We're produced by the site thealabamatake.com. I'm one of the hosts, Blaine Duncan, and why am I the host? Mainly because I often wonder why I like what I like and why I hate what I hate. Then there's the fact that in my spare time, I'm also an English teacher who's always looking to see how films, TV, books, and music are put together. It sort of stems from the fact that I was once a kid who grew up in front of a television set. But mine isn't the only viewpoint you get. With me is an erudite musician with a penchant for reading fine literature. That's Adam Morrow. And your other host, who's a media specialist who happens to be a film buff with encyclopedic knowledge on such a plethora of topics. That's going to be Donovan Reinwald. We'll hear from them both very directly. For this week's Taking It Down, we need to talk about the entirety of the FX Hulu series, The Bear. We also want to briefly touch on another FX Hulu series, The Old Man. And then at the very end, we're going to talk about one of the latest from the MCU, which was Thor, Love and Thunder, still in the theater. We're going to provide you with plenty of end of summer party conversations, or just count us as one of your pals who's watched that movie or show and talk back to us. Yeah, I mean, really, you could comment on some of our stuff, and that would be almost like talking to us. But here they are. Here's the us in the equation. On one side of me, it's our very own sous chef. It's Adam Morrow.
Thank you, Chef.
Thank you, Chef. And on the other, that was perfect. And our other host is Taking It Down. He usually takes his time getting to work because he's been out partying all night. It's Mr. Donovan Reinwald.
Thanks for having me, Blaine.
Yeah.
He's out all night chasing girlies.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought about saying. The Luna reference. We start our show with the Done Up Real Good Listener of the Week. And look, I'd be ashamed if I didn't give it to our editor for the site, as well as writer, as well as soon-to-be sports podcast host. It's Mr. T.D. Wood. He's our Listener of the Week. He gets a dilly bar. And you know, with him... With him living in Birmingham, there's a very small chance that his dilly bar may still be in one piece when it gets to him. It's doubtful, but there's a little hope.
Well, let's see. It's only 75 degrees at night instead of 105, so maybe it'll make it there in one piece when you overnight it from North Alabama.
One melted piece.
I like to imagine Blaine, like, just him driving to Dairy Queen saying, "One dilly bar, please," and then immediately just tearing his ass over to the post office.
Putting it in a paper envelope.
Yes.
Not even going in, like putting it in one of those scorching hot blue boxes. But at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the pickup's not until 4:45.
Hey, pickup's not till 4:45. You've got plenty of time.
This is great. Back home, Aaron's done for the day.
One of those situations, too, where the person taking the order, like, are you sure you don't want anything else? Are you
just one dilly bar?
No, one dilly bar, please.
Your child is crying in the back, looking at the ice cream menu. No, this is a work. It's a work trip. It's not a pleasure trip. Just this one dilly bar.
I'm deducting this from my taxes.
Gotta say, shout out to I had a buddy who lives in Canada, y'all. Canada of all places. Send me a video, very funny, zooming in and out on a dilly bar advertisement at a Dairy Queen. So Mr. Mark Allen Falk, he makes music as semi-athletic, by the way. Excellent songwriter, musician. But, you know, this dilly bar thing has gone international, is what I'm getting to.
Are there Dairy Queens in Europe? Our Europe listeners, let us know. We don't know.
Why not just cast the net worldwide, Blaine? Say, listeners from anywhere in the world, can you get a dilly bar where you are? Can I get a dilly bar in Thailand?
Do I need to mail you one? You can get a lot in Thailand, but I don't know if you can get a dilly bar.
I need to know.
I think that if we hadn't watched Normal People, and I still wasn't so bothered by that melting popsicle, there's just so many layers to this being so funny to me.
Given my old buddy and site co-creator and editor, TD, the Listener of the Week, though, is just a good segue. It's perfect. You guys ever work in a kitchen, restaurant situation at all?
I worked fast food, and I made at Chick-fil-A. The Chick-fil-A actually in the University Mall.
That's right, I remember
And
that.
I worked the register there, and I also made did prep work in the back, and then made the food up front, which is always fun because people can see you making their food.
Yeah.
And people, like they're kind of peering over your shoulder trying to make sure you're doing it right.
So what food did you make up front?
Everything. So once everything came out of the fryer, that's what we made up front. So like putting together I almost called them chicken nuggets. Putting together the nuggets.
They're nuggets.
I almost called them McNuggets.
Oh.
Putting together the nuggets, the chicken sandwich.
Okay.
The chicken tenders.
So you're assembling.
That was back when.
Up front.
Yes, there's a lot of assembling going on.
I gotcha.
And then you're prepping in the back. So and then it goes into the fryers, and then you assemble everything.
How did you, aside from the very obvious that you're a personable guy and you'll work with a smile? I witnessed you work this job. How did you end up out front? Aside from that obvious, instead of me when you told me that, I'm like, give me the fryer in the back, away from the public at the University Mall.
That was mostly it. Is I was just like, people found my cheery personality. They found me cheery, so I was able to end up working the front. So I would usually split between the register and putting the food together. Although we were such a small store, everyone had to do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So I also did my fair share of prep work.
You were a manager.
I was a manager.
Yeah. Dang.
See, if I had said, due to my cheery personality, I couldn't even finish that sentence. Y'all would have just started laughing. If I tried to convince you that I worked the register at a fast food place.
People would occasionally write in letters being like, this actually happened, where they were like, Donovan was just so great. He just brightened up my day.
Wow.
And I don't know what it is. I must be really, really good in 35-second bursts.
It totally makes sense to me.
The closest I ever came to this sort of situation is I worked the only grocery store, small town, for like 2 years. And I worked 2 Wednesdays before Thanksgiving. And that was a tough evening shift.
What'd you do at the grocery store?
I bagged groceries and took them. This was old school, take them out to the car for people situation.
Okay. So you were on the public-facing side of things.
Oh, yeah. And I did run a register in my last few months. That was really fun and easy. But then, for the most part, I stocked shelves, did it all. You name it. And then that Wednesday before Thanksgiving, everyone's coming in and trying to get the last thing that they forgot. And it's the most, I don't even think we took a break, but that's the only thing I have closely related to working a restaurant, and that's not even close. So,
I don't know. That's pretty, people are pretty grouchy, that last Wednesday before Thanksgiving. That's...
Yeah, they are. Where are we going with this, though? It takes us to our FX Hulu show called The Bear. We'll spoil the whole thing in a second, but I think there are 3 things you could know going in before you skip to the next discussion if you haven't watched it. It's about a brother of a deceased restaurant owner in Chicago, and he's been willed that restaurant, the brother who's alive. That's what it's about if you need to know anything going in, hence the restaurant talk. The other, it's one of the best shows of the year, I think. And lastly, I'll say that The Bear's whole first season's on Hulu. Episodes are 30 minutes or less, and they're only 8. From there, we're going to spoil the whole thing.
Sold.
Yeah, well, that might sell you. You don't really need to know anything going in. Probably the best show of the year so far. One of the top 2, 3.
Ooh, that's high praise.
Yeah.
I would put it in Severance are my 1 and 2.
That's really up there.
For me now, it's really duking it out with Better Call Saul. Its final season's airing right now. It's got like 3 more episodes, so we'll see how that wraps. Let's start, though. The Bear's a flawless season of television, isn't it?
I think so. I think there was a really great New Yorker article about it that came out in the last few days that I read to prep. There was some things that were pointed out in that maybe, if we're into full-on spoiler territory now, maybe the way that the money situation played out at the end was a little, just suspend some disbelief in an otherwise fairly realistic, gritty show. But it was also, this miraculous discovery was made while a classic Radiohead song was playing, and I'm not going to complain too much. I'll intersperse my thoughts on the music as we go along, and how magical all of that was. But that would be the only complaint. Otherwise, yes, I agree, it was a perfect season, especially to do it in those half-hour increments was really something, because this is not a lightweight story. A lot of television does this now. It asks quite a bit of you when you first get going. You have to be pretty astute to piece together. You meet your main character, if Carmi is the driving main character in the narrative. You meet his sister. You meet this other guy who may be his cousin who works at the restaurant with him.
They certainly call him cousin.
Yeah. You're kind of overwhelmed with grizzled line cook veterans in this restaurant, and you just kind of have to figure it out. And to go from there to having an ensemble of distinct personalities and motivations and really great stories, I thought was quite an accomplishment. Again, because it's, had this been like an HBO 10-episode hour-long or 8-episode hour-long thing, this is half the space that would be available to it. I don't know. I was just so impressed by that.
I suppose another critique is that would come in hindsight. You might end up saying it's an 8-episode pilot, but I think the ride is fulfilling enough that it's not going to matter.
When you say 8-episode pilot, do you mean trying to set the stage for
season 2?
Yeah, which was renewed after the show came out. I feel like it's important to note. I mean, they must have felt pretty good that they had something worth renewing. Because, this could have been a 2 or 3 episode, hour-long setup for the next phase of starting that restaurant, the next restaurant.
Yeah.
I see what you mean.
How much money do you think they had to spend on the soundtrack?
It's a good question.
Is that inexpensive, or do these bands tend to do it a little more cheaply than your Beatles or Led Zeppelins?
Tweety controls a ton of their own stuff as far as Wilco goes, so
lots of Wilco, lots of Radiohead. Well, maybe just one Radiohead.
And it's from OK Computer, so that's a major label affair. I don't know who has the rights to all that stuff at this point, but did you read the interview that Stephen Hyden, the great music critic, did with the show creators?
No, I didn't.
So they talk about in that. It's very, very good. And he is the perfect guy to kind of walk us through those soundtrack choices as a middle-aged Midwesterner who is a noted dad rock aficionado. But in that interview with Hyden, they talk about you place, when you're editing a show, you often put music in it to make your cuts that doesn't end up in the final thing, right? Like you start with something, you may say, I'm going to put this classic Radiohead song in here so that this feels good, and then we're going to find a song that may be more affordable
yeah,
or doesn't have maybe some of the, because if you put that in there, all of us, not all of us, but a huge portion of people are bringing complex histories and emotional connections to that song. They're going to color the way that we see that scene. I think it worked to the advantage of this show every time for me. Maybe that says something about target audiences, but they didn't, on a lot of those songs, end up taking them out. It just was too good to remove. And I thought that was really interesting.
You talked in our last episode how this scratched an itch of a 30-something guy who's flailing about in life. Of course, the tenets of an excellent show or movie or art at all, for me, is that it can be read on a bunch of different levels with evidence to back up each of those levels. But another through line I felt that was really vital is it's almost a treatise on the reverberations of suicide and addiction.
Yeah.
On top of what you were talking about. So there's at least 3 or 4 levels happening there. All of that I found really moving. So there's an Esquire piece from writer Jeff Gordonier, I think. Anyway, he interviewed Christopher Storer, who wrote the show. And there's a note in that piece that says, it feels almost like the collective stress of just living in 2022. I found that to be very apt. I didn't find this show too stressful to watch. I saw a lot of critics say that, and a few viewers just like say, "Oh, this stresses me out to watch." It didn't hit me. It didn't hit that nerve for me. Yeah, I was just on the ride. You know what I mean?
I had a few people tell me that they had to watch it in single episode doses.
Oh, I did too.
Whereas I binged this thing like 3 sessions, and hilariously, the third one was because Natalie had a really bad headache and didn't go to work, and I had thrown my back out and was laying on the couch one day. So just the most like, if you could create the target market for at least the soundtrack of this, it is guy of age to throw his back out and need a day on the couch with an ice pack. So
30-something staring
I'm all
down
healed
the
up.
barrel.
Thanks for asking. Yeah, all healed up now. But no, I get the stress thing, and I don't know if I related to it in some ways. I know I like jokingly say that some shows that have nothing to do with music are about being in bands.
Right, yeah.
I
like that too.
I definitely, I felt a lot of that energy of you're in a high pressure situation. Even the last 15 years, I think a lot of musicians want to be chefs and chefs want to be musicians, especially as chefs kind of became like rock stars there for a little while. Just being in close quarters with the same people day after day after day and kind of high pressure moments felt relatable, even though I had a crappy retail job but never worked in a kitchen, so I can't go apples to apples on it, but it did feel familiar. And one thing that New Yorker article pointed out was this did, Blaine, I know one of your holdups with this, and we talked about it a bit on the last pod, was you're not a food guy. All the foodie stuff kind of makes you recoil a bit, and I get it, totally understand.
Really?
That's been kind of overblown.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you would get
Wasn't
that.
that your position?
It was, and I was just surprised. I thought that you kind of dipped your toe in foodie stuff every now and again.
I love food if I'm traveling to go to if somebody's like, this is an authentic thing, or like, this is where if you lived here, you would eat here, not here, like that kind of thing. I want to go to those kind of places.
Like the Chick-fil-A in University Mall?
Yeah, sure. But I'm not in on the level of kind of what I was talking about with these chefs becoming famous and cultural figures and Instagram influencers and all that kind of stuff. It's just all of that has passed me by at the minimum, if not agitated me.
Okay. I'll insert a tangential remark to say that I think a lot of middle and upper class white people have started using food and foodie culture to denigrate lower class people.
Yeah, I agree with that, because there's
and I've turned off by that.
There's a price to sit at the table, literally. It is a cost prohibitive exercise to want to go to a fancy restaurant. Not everybody gets to experience that, which is maybe the beauty of them doing this at an Italian beef place, because it's decidedly Chicago.
Yeah, it's
decidedly
not
working class. Yeah. This New Yorker article pointed out that perhaps this is a lot of that rock star chef thing is not in vogue anymore, because it glorified kind of the tortured artist thing that other art forms, if you want to call cooking an art form, which I don't even want to touch that with a 10-foot stick. That's a tough debate.
That's the thing. I do think it is an art form.
You think so?
I think so. I think yeah. I'll just say yes and that yeah.
What about it is an art form to you? Because this is something, I have friends who write about food, who are cooks, who do all this stuff, and it can be hard for me, and it may be kind of what you were talking about, where I see the whole Michelin star thing as a very classist, or can be a very classist exercise, and even if they want to like go find the best gas station food in Mississippi, it's almost like they fetishize that to a point that's kind of gross and are almost like
Yes.
white asshole tourist in that moment. But what on the flip side, I mean, I guess I'm curious, how do you see it as art? What about it?
It just involves a lot of different things that could go wrong that you have to get right. There's the presentation, the taste, the restaurant itself, at times, and all that really needs to click together in order for it to be an enjoyable experience. Just like with making music as art, the drums have to be right, the mixing has to go well, the mastering needs to be pretty good, the packaging sometimes plays a role. I don't
makes
know.
sense.
It just kind of fit. But now, do I get invested in it as an art form? No, I don't. Never. Almost never, I would say. But by the way, I did hear from TD. I'll go back to him. He is our editor. But just in case anybody knows, just in case anyone doesn't know, TD's a restaurant guy. Helps run the restaurant. Heavily involved. He's gone from cook in the back all the way up to chef. I think we could give him that title, I did hear from him. He said it's the most realistic depiction of that scene, which that doesn't surprise me or probably anyone. It's thoroughly based in realism, maybe with the exception of the last 10 minutes of the entire first season.
Yeah.
It did make me wonder if the writer Chris Storer hasn't dealt with death, addiction, suicide in a similar way, as well as working in a restaurant. Or even the service industry in broader terms. I see the pitch being, I've got a show about a restaurant industry and trauma.
Yeah.
And like Hulu says, okay, that's it. Let's go for it.
This New Yorker article quoted Roger Ebert and said, "A movie is not about what it is about. It is about how it is about it."
I love that. That's exactly right. And that's that's art right there. That's art. Is it about more than that first opening level? Did you find Richie irredeemable?
No, I don't think so. Did he annoy you that much?
No, I just see a lot of conversation online about him maybe being a bit irredeemable. But no, I did not find him that bad. In the end. Few episodes, yes, but not overall.
It's been renewed for a second season. Why would anybody assume that they couldn't write a redemption arc for him?
In fact, I found him kind of funny in the back half.
Yeah.
I will predict this. I'll make a rather bold prediction. We can come back, and no one comes back to this show, but we could maybe remember. I'll say that this show can't last over 2 more seasons because Jeremy Allen White, who plays Carm, and Ayo Edebri, who plays Sydney, I think they'll be moving very quickly into bigger roles, and deservedly so. It felt a lot like a discovery role for both of them, even though I know Jeremy Allen White's been in Shameless, which is kind of a big series. And apparently, the young lady who plays Sydney is a comedian. I don't know that I would have guessed that, but it does make sense on some of her timing to her reactions to some of the other line readings.
I was going to say that they always say sometimes getting a comedian to play the serious part, especially something where they're working in such tight quarters like this. Like you said, the timing is, she was great.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if both of those do something really big really soon. Getting them under contract might be hard for beyond season 2 or 3 or something.
This also felt like almost like a really, really great short story where every word had value. It was really muscular. It didn't lag, and I almost kind of wonder, would I want more than another season? I mean, they did such a great job creating a narrative over the first season that, they could probably write several more extensions of that. But if it ended next season, that'd be fine. If it had ended after this season, it would have left me wanting more for sure. But it was obviously written to be self-contained on some level while providing something for the future. But it doesn't need to go on indefinitely to me for it to be a great show.
I'm going to give you 2 options. Which is the better episode? The 20-minute episode where everything just boils to a hectic, frenetic stress ball, or the episode where Richie accidentally gives all the kids Xanax.
I knew you were going to pick that as your second option because that was such a funny scene.
Why did you know?
Because I knew, I was thinking about, I was like, we're going to talk about the Xanax for sure. An under-celebrated
I didn't have it in
moment.
my notes, but it just popped in my head.
I mean, I felt like you learned so much about those three characters and their weird, the tension of like, they're really close, but, you know, two of them kind of hate each other and are afraid of the third one, yet they're all also family. I don't know if they're actually related or not, just in this like very Chicago kind of way, very questionable money kind of way. Yeah, when the kids are just conked out, that was good. And their reaction to it, it's like, oh, we have learned something about how these characters view life, like all of life, not just like life in the alley behind an Italian beef place, but even at a well-to-do children's birthday party. Yeah, the kids are drugged. They'll be fine. They'll be fine.
It was so unrealistic that it was very funny, and how they were displayed across the yard and living room.
Yeah.
It's very good. So Carm has the moment in the last episode where he speaks at the Al-Anon meeting and offers a good bit of exposition for the final episode to wrap. Was that a little too pat for you? A little too easy of a way to give him backstory?
No, I didn't think so. For a show that had given us so little for so long, like you don't even know that his brother has committed suicide for a while. He's just the dead brother, you know, and you slowly connect all these dots. And so for him, especially for a character who held so much back for so long, to have a moment of, at least it would appear on screen, catharsis and releasing all that, I mean, that feels fairly true to life and a good way to give us all this information. No, I wasn't mad at that. I would have been mad if they'd done something like him and Sydney, there's the flame of a romantic relationship or something like that. That would have been too cheesy, too far.
I still kind of wanted them to release their tension with some sort of kiss or makeout, though.
I mean, it was there. It was simmering. They have some chemistry going for sure. But when they started texting, I was relieved that it didn't go there. Now, season 2, it's fair game. That's on the table.
There was even a little chemistry in their text messages, as basic as they were.
Totally.
It's weird. Not weird, but good. Yeah, let's wrap our conversation with the bear. We still haven't said who the brother is, so Donovan still gets that bit of shock to the system.
There's so many things that they do well with the brother, talking about setting Carmi up for success, how his brother was looking out for him the whole time. And I know he's kind of having this moment of like, well, everybody thought that he was their best friend. And, you know, I didn't even know he was struggling with addiction, all these kind of things that weigh on him. You know, that flashback scene where they're all hanging out in the kitchen and his brother starts to prep the food and then doesn't do anything when Carmi finishes it. You know what I mean? I thought that was such a good, gentle metaphor for, and it wasn't even a metaphor. It was just showing, here's a family recipe that older brother starts. Cooking is obviously very important to this family, but he doesn't even look over his shoulder while little brother finishes doing this task and gets the actual cooking process going, which is obviously setting up for what goes down at the end. But that was such a nice, you don't even have to ask, was that cheesy, was that too on the nose, whatever. That's just great writing and presentation.
And there you go. We thoroughly recommend The Bear. Looking forward to the next season. Let's take a break. We're going to talk maybe a little on The Old Man and then a lot on MCU. It's our break. We just update things related to the bigger picture of the AlabamaTake.com. Of course, if you follow the Alabama Take on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, you'll stay pretty caught up. But socials can be tricky these days. They have this thing now where they want to show you what they want you to see rather than what you want to see. So we'll update you here too. I alluded to it earlier. We have new projects in the works, namely a couple of podcasts that are being finalized. Maybe more than a couple. One of which involves sports and the other involves books. I'm teasing these out every week as they're starting to click together. We have you covered with the Alabama Take, and I'm very proud of everyone who contribute and help. The specific of both of those are going to be ironed out, and you'll see it on social media. Give us a follow. The podcast, Alabama Slam, hits airwaves every Friday morning, so be sure to subscribe to it if you're a wrestling fan. And look, if I'm a wrestling fan, this is the one and only. You got superfan Corey Hanna, a seasoned interviewer, and former indie wrestler Patrick Akers breaking down the big storylines each week. You don't need any more. This Song Sucks, the podcast where three musician friends dissect what is wrong with a specific song, is slowly coming together. I heard from them this weekend. Subscribe to our YouTube channel because all of the podcasts are there, but perhaps even better for such a visual medium. The second season of the interview talk show Short Takes is housed there and has just wrapped. Second season ended with one of the best guests for anyone. That's Lee Baines III. Such an affable, nice guy. See what he's got on his brain. Lastly, visit the site, click on shop, and get yourself something nice. Let's get back to the show.
Blaine, you sold me on this show, by the way. I've only watched one episode. This is The Old Man.
Oh, okay.
That we're talking about.
Yeah, we're going to talk about The Old Man.
You sold me on this show. I've watched one episode, and I am in.
Yeah, the first episode is good. The second episode is better, and I'll be interested to see what more you have to say about it from there. We won't be spoiling really anything about The Old Man. We might actually come back to it. 7 episodes, all of which are now on Hulu, if you want to play along with us. Jeff Bridges just carries that first episode, and he carries it.
Yes, he does.
He carries it so well that you're in already, right?
I also really appreciated John Lithgow's character.
Okay.
The transition from family man to he's the guy who's kind of hunting Jeff Bridges. That they both seem I like John Lithgow. Mm-hmm. So if anyone's going to be able to hold up their end of the acting bargain with Jeff Bridges, I think they made a wise choice there.
Yeah.
Watching him go from playing with his grandkid to trying to get Jeff Bridges to, I can't remember the character's name, trying to get him to give it up was almost chilling.
Okay.
To see him make that switch.
I agree with that, and that is such a credit to both of those guys. The second episode's truly great, as is the third. I think there might be a dip. We can get into that more. We'll put The Old Man on the shelf for now.
That's where it belongs.
I do recommend it, especially for there's a lot of viewers, a lot of people whom I have recommended it to because I know it's an elevated kind of spy television show, and
yeah,
that's its selling point. I think it's not your usual crap, I guess, in that genre.
How often do you get to see Jeff Bridges act? When he's trying to be at the top of his game, or he's usually at the top of his game.
Yeah, he's fantastic, and he gets better with age.
Yes, he does.
I'll say 2 things. First, I thought it was going to be a show about aging or dealing with mental decline in a hyper-fast world of spy or CIA kind of thing. I don't think that's what it was, so I kind of went in with this notion that got flipped a little. And the second thing I'll say is that every episode seems to pivot a little into another direction. Some of the pivots don't work as well in the later half, but still are...
Okay.
But still hook you, still make you want to watch. So, well, let's touch on it after we do more catching up on The Old Man. I will ask a quick question before we go into the very opposite direction, the very hyper unrealistic. Have either of you heard of Blackbird on Apple TV Plus?
Only by your recommendation and a few ads.
Same thing, only from you.
Okay. Donovan, you watched Mindhunter on Netflix, right?
I did watch Mindhunter. And Zodiac, too.
Oh, that may have been the first time I roped you into the podcast, is to talk about Mindhunter years ago.
Did we talk about Mindhunter together? We might have.
Adam was gone. I think I got you to fill in. If you like the vibe of Mindhunter, you are going to eat up Blackbird. And I don't like doing that a lot. I don't like saying, if you like this, you'll like that. Because... my goal is hopefully that I can recommend a variety of different shows, but this one, man, oh man, it really kind of picks up where Mindhunter left off a little. Mindhunter, as unfortunately, doesn't seem like it's ever going to come back. Gosh, what a gut punch that is, knowing that.
So I have a question.
Fire away.
Does it? So Mindhunter I think those you could tell which episodes David Fincher directed, and you can tell which ones he didn't direct. Does this have that kind of same feel, or is it a more kind of consistent, smooth ride all the way through?
Very consistent, very smooth.
Okay.
Because I'm impressed with it. Are you familiar at all with Taron Egerton?
Yes.
See, I wasn't.
The actor?
Yeah, the actor. I wasn't. And he's in the running for Wolverine role. That's the big rumor online everywhere. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to watch Blackbird. I was like, well, if this guy gets Wolverine, I kind of want to watch something he's in. He's fantastic. Just fantastic. And he's British. I would have never known that. Good stuff. If you need just a hint of what the show's about, it's kind of a prison story. That's really all you'd need to know. It's a prison story. Taron Egerton plays the main role. Ray Liotta makes his final on-screen appearance.
Oh, I didn't know he was in that.
Mm-hmm. Last role.
Wow.
Before he died. That's right. Okay, no natural segue here other than to say both Donovan and I have seen... I don't have a good one there. We've both seen Thor, Love and Thunder of late. I haven't heard a thing on Donovan's opinions about that movie, so I'm really eager to ask him. We'll be spoiling it. There are a few spoilers to be had. Come back if you haven't had the chance to watch. If you're waiting for a Disney Plus release, just save this, come back. You can hear what we think then. Donovan, we're in full spoilers. Take it away. What'd you think?
Okay. I walked out of that movie feeling like it was somewhat less than the sum of its parts. It had a whole lot of good stuff going for it. Good acting. It even had good writing. Taika Waititi is a competent director. He's not, sometimes people like to say that he's a weird director. He's not really weird. He's just quirky. The whole thing left me, I don't know what it was, but I was somewhat, I wanted something else from it. I wanted more. In a way that Thor Ragnarok didn't leave me wanting more. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was just that maybe the stuff with Jane Foster felt a little almost too quick. Like there was too, it moved too, or if there, I don't know, but it was a little less, for me it was a little less than the sum of its parts. That's my review in a nutshell.
I think that this might be the example you use to prove Scorsese's assertion that Marvel isn't cinema.
When I went into this movie and going into this movie, I'm thinking of it as the theme park ride.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty good theme park ride. Yeah, it felt kind of meandering. Mm-hmm. I guess it's about Thor looking for and finding true love. It kind of feels like it's not about anything.
100% agree with that. If anyone could have pulled this off, it seems as though it would have been Taika Waititi, he's the director, we mentioned him. His 2019 movie, Jojo Rabbit, was one of my favorites of that year, and it was able to switch tones so well and just hit you when it did switch those tones, make you laugh when you were supposed to laugh, make you feel sad when you're supposed to feel sad. This version of Thor wanted that, and it did not. The tonal shifts were not smooth and not good. The opening scene that starts with Gore, who's played by Christian Bale, caring for his dying daughter. And then there's also what you mentioned, Dr. Jane's cancer. Those had moments of true pathos. But then would just be dropped like a rock.
It seemed almost like with Thor Ragnarok, the jokes kind of became the purpose.
100, yes.
And the jokes, especially jarring with the beginning, because the beginning is kind of heartbreaking, and Christian Bale he doesn't have a lot to work with, but what he does a good job. But the jokes kind of overwhelm any kind of pathos or real emotion.
Yes.
In the movie.
He gets 3 minutes to sell you on this character. And then they put him in a moment where he walks into this Garden of Eden kind of way, and it's so flimsy. It really feels like two different movies stitched together.
Yeah.
And for this one, none of the jokes landed for me. You talked about how it was like joke heavy, but none of them made me chuckle, laugh, whatever.
Some of them worked for me, and some of them worked more for me. Some of them worked less for me. I think You know, some of them, like, I did get a chuckle out of when Chris Pratt's character is looking up at the Guardians of the Galaxy. Thor's trying to make eye contact with him, keep moving. That one gave me a good chuckle. I got a chuckle out of some of. I do find Chris Hemsworth. I find him a funny comedic actor. Mm-hmm. I think he doesn't take himself very seriously. So some of the stuff that he was doing with, like, you know, team kids in a cage was funny. But then there were other jokes that didn't land at all. Like when the kids all their toys and weapons got supercharged.
Yeah,
I think that was supposed to be funny. I'm not really sure. It wasn't landing for me.
No.
And here's what's really bad is I can't remember a lot of the. I remember a couple of the jokes that made me chuckle, but by and large, I don't remember the jokes from this movie.
Had this movie come out early in Marvel's run, I think I'd have been more forgiving. But now that it's come after Endgame, and even something like Ant-Man, which isn't trying to be anything heavy, and it's amusing in a fun summer movie kind of way, even in comparison to that, Thor just falls. This movie of Thor falls flat.
I grew to hate the screaming goats.
I did too.
Grew to absolutely hate them.
Me too. I dreaded seeing them.
Completely overused.
Uh-huh.
And that's not what you want me to walk out of the movie theater thinking. I mean, and I think I had a fun ride overall. I didn't feel like I'd just thrown away my money. I also didn't feel like this was it. Like, this was a real movie. This was real cinema.
No, it wasn't. Phase 4, which will end its amorphous run with Wakanda Forever this year, is just setting up Young Avengers. It's obvious now. Every movie and every show that has part of this phase has a potential younger person to use in a bigger meetup. And that's fun. That's actually quite excellent. Many of them, with the exception of Haley Steinfeld in Hawkeye and Iman Vellani and Miss Marvel in her own show, was just inorganic to the point of even being forced. This happened in Thor. Toward the end, he rescues Gore's daughter in a way, or takes her in. And it's just sort of another example of an inorganic way of inserting someone young to use later.
There was some sweetness, I guess, in the way that Gore had to make his choice of what he's going to do. Mm-hmm. Not that there was a lot of suspense, because it's pretty obvious the universe isn't about to end. All gods aren't about to be destroyed. We know Thor is going to come back. So it did feel a little slotted in there. Mm-hmm. Although I did laugh that he at the joke that he went from sad god to dad god. That made me laugh.
Well, you know what was good? I think there was a couple things. I thought Christian Bale was fantastic, which goes against the movie because we needed more of him. I needed more of him on the screen.
Agreed. I feel like he did not have a lot to work with. Mm-mm.
And it's a shame because he's probably only going to do one movie. He's not the kind of guy to stick around in the Marvel universe.
No.
They blew that. There's a simple movie here with Christian Bale, Chris Hemsworth, and Natalie Portman. Maybe Tessa Thompson. There's a simple movie. Put them, get that going, boil it down to those interacting with one another. Not Korg, not the Guardians for 5 minutes, mandatory show up. And it even could have had a stronger emotional punch if it was stripped down like that.
This one, I agree. It felt overstuffed. Like you said, the Guardians showed up just because they had to. Korg was kind of funny. You know, he has his moments, but you could have just had Taika Waititi be the narrator. You didn't necessarily need and have it be a tighter movie that way. You didn't necessarily need all the extraneous characters.
I think a good example of why this movie wasn't good is they had 3 instances of Korg recounting things you already knew. That
was kind of Waititi trying to put his own spin on those things, especially the Jane Foster relationship part, because Chris Hemsworth and Natalie Portman just weirdly do not have chemistry with each other.
No.
Or at least I think that they don't.
I agree.
Yeah, isn't it? It's strange because they're both. Natalie Portman is an excellent actor, and Chris Hemsworth is, I'd say, he's a good actor.
He's fine.
He's not bad.
Sure.
I enjoy watching him. Yeah, but they have no chemistry, and I think that was Waititi trying to put his own stamp on kind of what had come before.
Mm-hmm.
Try and give you a little bit, try and manufacture it, and I think he did better than any of the other directors has done. but it's still, like you said, it kind of takes you out of the movie that is being told right there in front of you.
And I'd say the black and white scene was pretty good, though. That was a really good moment.
That was cool.
That was something Taika Waititi could definitely put in his resume. Look at this scene. And it was good. That scene was quality, I think, but just so much of it. We've talked about the problems of it. All of the complaints I've had about this phase of MCU could be reconciled with some of these announcements from this weekend's Comic-Con. I don't know if you guys have been following it. We'll rope Adam back into this conversation. So here are some of the announcements, and we can kind of comment on a few of them as we go. They announced Avengers Secret Wars. Sounds promising.
Was that in the comics? Was that with the Skrulls? Where the Skrulls had replaced some of the Avengers?
As far as I know, it was.
Or am I mixing it up?
And no, I think you're right. I think that this is going to...
Okay.
So they're doing a Disney Plus show called Secret Invasion, and I bet this one's going to pick up where the show leaves off. And I think that there's a certain synergy that they could really harness by saying, here's 6 episodes, and it's going to lead into a huge wrap-up, a 2-hour movie. I think there's something to be done there that could work, and I'm kind of here for.
That brings us back. Remember when we talked about Stranger Things, and could they have put the last episode in the theater and
just done
it's like how much
exactly? Yeah.
Or when somebody's going to do that eventually, right? Like we have reached the point in streaming and the way that we consume media that's going to happen. That's going to take some balls to, for lack of a better phrase, to trust an audience to study and do their homework before putting like ungodly amounts of money into making one of these blockbusters.
And who better to do it though than Disney?
Yeah.
Right?
They've got the money to burn on an experiment like that.
Here's the thing the only thing I know, other than, Donovan mentioned the comic and the scrolls. The other part that kind of makes me this excited is they're using Avengers in there. It's the first time they've done it since Endgame, and they even, at one point, like last year, they talked about how they won't be another Avengers movie. Well, that, of course, was a lie,
right.
Or they changed their mind. Moving on, I'm not too sold on Daredevil Born Again. What more could be done? He's getting his own show, he's getting another season of his own show. Could be cool to see some character overlap with people he hasn't interacted with yet.
Bringing him more into the MCU full, like they did with Spider-Man, was kind of a fun cameo, but... Oh, and I cannot remember the guy that plays Matt Murdock.
Charlie Cox.
He's a perfectly good character. Charlie Cox is good.
I mean, it's like he was born for it.
They surrounded him with so many mediocre actors until Jon Bernthal got there, and he was just fine. I was not super impressed with him as Punisher or with Punisher.
Yeah.
I don't want to see the same thing.
No, and
you gotta show me something new.
Exactly. And I think it's going to have to revolve around some character overlap in this instance. They announced Fantastic Four. I mean, they've had that announced, but I guess they re-announced it or reminded us. I think that they're calling the next phase the Multiverse Saga. That's something to think about, but moving on, I know.
That damn multiverse.
So there's another Avengers movie maybe coming out after Secret Wars. It's called Avengers: The Kang Dynasty. Obviously, the Jonathan Majors character from Loki getting a bigger chunk of time. And look, Jonathan Majors, okay.
I'm ready to see more of him.
Me too.
And Kang the Conqueror has always been a cool villain.
Yeah. And plus, anything that sounds like a high mix of characters does have my attention right now. I'm going to I did some predictions with the Bear earlier. I'm going to make a prediction based on Disney Plus stuff. They announced the show Echo. I'm going to predict this may be its biggest flop. Does anyone remember the character Echo or care?
I remember who she is, but I don't particularly care. I don't need more.
She was in Hawkeye and was kind of sort of the villain.
They spent a lot of time on her that really dragged away from the main show.
To set this up, right? And we don't even care that it's set up. The Black Panther installment that's supposed to wrap this phase in November will likely be good. They did come out with a teaser for this. It looked somewhat emotional. how will they address the absence of Chadwick Boseman's going to be. It has me very engaged. Do y'all have comments on the possibility of Ryan Coogler helping out the MCU here at the end of the year?
I didn't know that this was going to be the one that wrapped this phase. That's an interesting... How? Well, I mean, of all the ones that have come out in this, I'm excited to see it. I will see it. I've enjoyed that character over the last few years. You know, you said it was something to the effect of it's been such a scattered, amorphous phase. And it just seems
such
like
a vague phase.
If you have an end game ending a phase, it's like, yeah, of course. A heavy hitter that was multiple phases in the making. So ending on this, I don't know. You know, we kind of talk about Marvel burnout a lot on this program the last couple months, and I really want to get up for that movie, but that's some heavy lifting to put on it, to say not only do you have to deal with this very, very public, famous, tragic young man's death, also it's going to wrap up this phase and blah, blah, blah.
Especially when he was the star of the first movie. It doesn't seem like it's going to be easy to slot a character in to fill his absence. And also, to comment on what Adam said, it's so weird that we, in this same phase, we had the Eternals, and now we're ending with Black Panther, because do those two movies have anything in common with each other?
No. Did any of these movies?
No.
Yeah, besides introducing, I guess this phase, you could say it was the introducing new characters phase. I don't know. But then,
maybe
I don't know.
They're so trying to exhaust us with this that, like, once they have a completely clean slate of younger actors, we'll be like, oh, thank God, and be ready for new adventures.
Well, Endgame was not only the end of Phase 3, but it felt like the end of 3 phases as well, not just,
That was the end of the whole thing, to me. They could have never made...
it was.
Or taken, 5, 10 years off and come back. Obviously, you don't do that when you have a cash machine, but as far as a narrative, a franchise, whatever, I mean, that truly... now when characters meet from different stories, you're just like, I don't care. I don't, there's no...
Somewhat.
Generally, that's the vibe that I have when that happens, versus pre-Endgame. It's like, whoa, this person's meeting this person. It's like a fun, all these people exist in the same place, and it just has lost all of that.
Yeah.
They're just kind of crossing over just to cross over. Putting in a character just because they have him locked down for however many him or her or them locked down for however many movies.
Yeah. Then we got the project that's closest to its release date, that She-Hulk. Its Comic-Con trailer looked much improved upon the initial one because of the CGI, I think, improvement. But it looks very predictable, this show does. But they are doing that thing we're talking about where they're throwing all types of superheroes together. And I'm happy that they didn't disregard the character of Emil Blonsky from the Hulk movie, who turned into, the monster at the end of the Hulk, which Hulk defeated. Not Abomination is the name of the monster. It's nice that they don't disregard some of what they have in the closet, on the shelf. They pull it down. And I'll say this, though, and maybe we could wrap here. I suppose I'm still on this ship, especially with some of these announcements, because I think Natalie has said this, one of our co-hosts has said this before. I just got to see what they do with the X-Men. How are they going to incorporate them? But, I'm still on the ship, but I got my life jacket handy.
You're eyeballing a spot on the escape vessels for sure. You've got one reserved.
Yeah. I got one question before we leave. Do you want to see a John Krasinski Mr. Fantastic? Since we got to see him in Doctor Strange. No?
Not at all.
That would be horrible?
No,
okay.
I don't think it'd be horrible. I don't have any interest in it.
I got one question before we leave.
Let's do it.
Since we're talking about future projects, and it's for Donovan.
Oh, boy.
Rings of Power. They keep dropping more and more trailers, more and more information. It's a two-parter. One, how are we going to get Blaine to watch this show so that we can talk about it here? He's not a Lord of the Rings guy.
I'm in.
Would you rewatch the Peter Jackson trilogy in preparation?
Gosh, you know what? Last night I was up late and I was thinking to myself that I might.
You should. Watch it. That thing won Best Picture for a reason.
I guess so. I may just watch the show and let you guys walk me through it every week.
Well, one thing that I want to hear Donovan's take on this because he is a deeply versed Tolkienite. But Blaine, if you were,
I don't know about that.
Blaine, if you were to rewatch the Peter Jackson stuff, I would say it would be interesting because that, I think, most people who adore that world at least feel that the spirit of the text is there, largely. There are people who kind of argue about what you include, what you don't include, how you portray a certain character in detail, blah, blah, blah. Whereas, like, the Hobbit trilogy completely whiffed, to me, on the spirit of the original. And
Agreed.
It looks, from the trailers, like possibly a more Jackson-esque treatment of this. Maybe a little bit more patience, a little bit more attention to the Tolkien spirit. With that, I will say, Blaine, watch the original trilogy. We can text about it. It would be very fun. Donovan, what do you think about the trailers that have come out so far?
I was actually going to say what you said, which is that they're definitely trying to remind you more of the original trilogy, of the Peter Jackson trilogy. I think that's the feeling that they're kind of trying to recapture for you. I don't know. I'm still very torn about this because this is a project that could just go so off the rails, as we saw with The Hobbit when they tried to pad out into like, okay, what's going on in the larger universe, and it was just not very good. But I'm gonna be watching it.
Most expensive show ever. How could you not?
Yeah.
And not only that,
It should be interesting if nothing else.
not only that, we have House of the Dragon premiering late next month.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we got some things to look forward to. Lots slated. So we'll save our thoughts on some of this for when it happens. And yeah, I'll probably watch. I'm pretty sure I will watch the Lord of the Rings show, and maybe those movies beforehand. Although I've watched 1.5 of them already. But yeah.
I would love for there to be a weekly segment on what did Blaine think of The Fellowship. Next week, what did he think of Two Towers? Third, just like a little 10-minute aside, what did you think of Return of the King? Blaine going, when will this damn movie end?
Lots of walking.
And Hobbit's still walking.
Well, that's it. The Alabama Takes on social. Say hello to us. Follow us. We'll be back next Tuesday. Share us with a friend. Goodbye.